Talking about leveraging e-content and just content in general to kind of really talk about the positioning of the brand and the value prop. I think influencer is going to be key to spread the word again, and unlock that full potential, and kind of like really making sure that when we partner with influencers that we get that authentic review, authentic experience, because that's what the brands, like if you look at the old commercials, were really based off of, is kind of that authentic model that was talking about her hair and then didn't know that it was delivered by Suave. So how can we leverage the power of influencers to test the brand, get their own opinion about the brand, and communicate on their own personal experience? Because that's really what we're going to try to do here, is getting authentic content and get people to talk about what is unique about their experience using the product.
Welcome back to Generation Influence, a podcast focusing on the movers and shakers working behind the scenes in influencer marketing and e-commerce. I'm your host, Bill Hildebolt, one of the co-founders of gen.video, a leading platform in the influencer marketing space focused on e-commerce outcomes and advanced analytics. Today's guest is Noah Knoblauch, 2 months into a brand new role as the head of e-commerce at Suave Brands. Very exciting, and we're going to get straight into that. But first, Noah, tell us how you got to Suave.
Hey, Bill, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. I was really looking forward to the conversation. I've done most of my career in CPG. I actually was raised in France and did all of my education for full background all the way through grad school in France, and discovered the world of consumer goods with a couple internships at Procter & Gamble in Paris in the Netherlands, and decided to come back to the US after school as a full-time employee with Procter & Gamble about 7 years ago. And I started my CPG career in a very traditional fashion, a couple roles in the grocery traditional channel. Had the opportunity to lead the hair care business of Procter & Gamble on Amazon before being promoted to the director of sales for CVS on the hair care business as well. Then a couple months in, I actually had the opportunity to join a startup and lead all of their sales and e-commerce in the CPG space. And I thought I wanted to kind of change trajectory and maybe discover the entrepreneurial route. And so I went there, and it was a great opportunity to see a different structure after a big corporation like P&G. Unfortunately, the company ended up being at the verge of bankruptcy, and so I had to look for another opportunity. Those are the risks, and moved to Shark Ninja. And Shark Ninja is a fantastic innovator in the electronic space, electronic consumable space. Um, Unfortunately, but the company wasn't the right fit for me. I realized a few months in, and we can talk about it a little later in the podcast. But that's where I started looking for new opportunities, and got headhunted by Suave a few months ago now.
Wow, that's a great story. I love people who are aggressive with their personal career management, and you've definitely done that. As you mentioned, like, let's definitely make sure we circle back to that, because I think that's really useful, career advice for other people to be able to learn from somebody who has been, as passionately aggressive in sort of managing where you're headed for your career, kind of having goals, knowing where you want to go, and following those. So we're going to come back to that, but I definitely want to jump straight into the Suave opportunity, because I'm so excited about this. I think this is really, really interesting. Obviously Suave is a very well-known brand, but one of the things that some of our viewers may not know is that a private equity firm called YellowWood bought Suave in May of 2023, so earlier this year. And this is the part that's really amazing for me. You guys are basically building this thing or rebuilding it from scratch as a standalone business. And so tell us all about that. Like, the idea that this sort of existing huge brand that all of us know could be rebuilt in a standalone kind of way is fascinating to me. So what did YellowWood see? How's it going? Is this as exciting as it sounds like? Or just give us the story.
Yeah, no, it was hard to believe when they came to knock on the door, because to your point, like, it's rare when you hear that those huge brands being acquired to be a standalone business. Well, background, YellowWood is a very unique private equity firm in a sense that they only focus on consumer goods, and they have an incredible track record of buying and developing brands. And I'll just name a couple like Dr. Teal's in the bath, Contu in hair care, and then more recently Dr. Scholl's in the healthcare that they bought from buyers a couple years ago. So they really know what they're doing, and they're expert in that sense. And they what they saw is that, I mean, Suave has a huge potential. It's a brand that it's one in out of two households in the U.S. It has a lot of loyalty and long heritage since it's been around from 1930. And unfortunately, Suave in Unilever's portfolio wasn't falling in the priority spaces as the corporation had been focused on investing in growth unique spaces, strategic growth spaces. And so that's where YellowWood saw that by putting the right level of brand investment and operational focus, it could really unlock the full potential of the brand. And so that's what drove the acquisition that occurred on May 1st. And to your point, like you mentioned, what's super exciting because we are building a standalone business from the ground up. And since I started, I've seen some incredible talent from the industry join the team with unique backgrounds, kind of both that hybrid big corporation, small CPG startup experience. So it's very entrepreneurial, and for me, I'm really excited because I have the opportunity to kind of rebuild the e-commerce strategy from scratch and paint my own vision for the brand, and that's incredible to be able to come at that early stage and kind of rethink through the whole process and make it my own and collaborate with a great team of people to bring it to life. And from a retailer standpoint, since the beginning of the announcement, uh, people have been super receptive about the acquisition, and they're really excited about the opportunity of getting a new level of focus on a brand that plays a key role for them. So I think all in all, it's going really, really well.
That's awesome. I have to say, I wasn't familiar with YellowWood, but when you started connecting those dots for me, Dr. Teal's is a brand that, if I think back 10 years ago, I had never heard of it, and all of a sudden, like, I see it everywhere in the stores. And now I personally have an industrial size bag of Dr. Teal's Epsom salts in my
There you
bathroom.
go.
So, I mean, right, they're there. Suddenly, it's just out of nowhere. So clearly, these are guys who know what they're doing. And Suave is, it is really interesting that, that Unilever was comfortable letting it go. And so I'm really excited to hear more about, how it's going, what you guys see there. It is one of those brands I feel like, even if you don't have it in your own home, anytime you're in an Airbnb, anytime you're visiting your aunt and uncle or your grandparents, there's always a bottle of Suave in the bathroom, right? It is just this, to me, pervasive value brand. And that's where I want to pick up, especially when we think about e-commerce. I don't think anybody would say, anything other than Suave is known as a value brand. It is the one when you're in the store, and again, maybe you're on vacation and you just, couldn't pack your shampoo, and you need a quick bottle of shampoo. I mean, it's there, the right price point. Even if you're going to throw half the bottle away, you don't feel bad about buying it. And so, but when we think about selling on a platform like Amazon, right? So maybe for the brick and mortar guy, seems like a dream job. For you as the e-commerce guy, when we think about Amazon, and value is incredibly important, but you also have to invest really aggressively to break through, because everyone kind of has a little bit of value positioning. So I feel like it's like everyone's trying to steal your spotlight. And again, to break through, you've got to invest aggressively into the platform, into all the e-commerce platforms. How is the positioning for you as a value brand? Is it helpful, or does it make it more challenging? Are you leaning into that value positioning on e-commerce, or are you looking to do something slightly different with it?
Yeah, I mean, man, you're spot on. It's just honestly, it's not even just Suave from an e-commerce standpoint. With the experience that I have, it's just challenging to sell any personal care brand that has a low dollar per ounce price lope. and is bulk and heavy because just the equation is not e-commerce friendly. You're shipping extremely heavy products that cost a fortune to move around with low margins. And so I had the same issue where when I was at Procter and Gamble, even with more premium products. But transparently, I mean, when I first was approached by this opportunity, I really didn't think there was a future for Suave in e-commerce. But like digging into the every single unit economics of our product in our portfolio helped me realize that there are opportunities. It's a fine equation that you need to solve for. You need to like you said, provide value to the consumer, meet Amazon's financial requirements, and then be profitable for Suave. Because of that, like, and looking at all of our portfolio, we are making deliberate choices of not selling certain categories or certain segments of our portfolio that just doesn't make sense on Amazon because of the financials. But there's definitely opportunities, and you'd be surprised with how we can bring it to life and play with the value brand and deliver on that.
I love it. All right. And so, as I was doing my research trying to get ready for the podcast, it did seem to me like part of that positioning and part of the strategy, and again, not that this is, you know, not seen before in this category because of those challenges, but it seemed like you guys were really leaning into the bulk purchasing and the bundling, to make it efficient both for the consumer and then to try to get around some of those profitability issues for you and Amazon. Is that fair, or am I misreading that?
No, I mean, I think it's no secret if you look at Amazon, you look at our assortment today. In order to get to the right price point that will unlock that value equation, you have to be selling in bulk. But you kind of mentioned to it, we are really looking into strategically designing regimen bundles or certain bottle size that are more preferred by the consumer and that meet their needs in order to kind of offer an alternative to those bulk options. So we're going to be looking at a hybrid portfolio moving forward.
Got it. Love it. Yeah, actually, the idea of buying bulk in this category, to me, from a consumer perspective, makes a lot of sense because the alternative is you kind of lean into the subscribe and save. And what I've seen in my personal experience, it's pretty easy to get off kilter with your subscribe and save, and suddenly you got more bottles in your cupboard than than you would even have if you were buying massive bulk. So one way or
Absolutely.
another, you kind of get there. So so doing it in bulk in a way that works for you guys makes a lot of sense to me, and I would think in an emerging kind of way for the consumer as well. All right, keeping on this theme, and one of the themes of the podcast overall this year has definitely been retail media.
That's the
Are you
hot
guys
topic.
playing there, and how aggressively are you playing there?
Yeah, I mean, retail media is the magic word over the last couple of years, isn't it? uh,
Yes.
no, for sure. I mean, retail media is in everybody's marketing mix and certainly is going to be in Suave's marketing mix. However, I think our approach is going to be maybe a little bit different than what we see from large CPG organizations. And I say that because unfortunately, or fortunately in our case, when you inherit from a brand like Suave, um, brand managers in larger corporations that have multi-brand portfolios don't have the bandwidth to really be granular in how they set their retail media strategy and how they monitor the performance. And so, really, what you end up seeing is a lot of campaigns that are being built in a kind of peanut butter spread, build it and leave it approach, which ends up wasting a lot of retail media.
Mm,
And some of the challenges that these brand managers are facing in larger corporations is that they have a set budget that they need to spend every dollar on in order to annualize it year over year. It's thresholds that are established. It's how budgets are built, and so as a result, those kind of guidances have tendency to drive unproductive media dollars. And as we inherit from the budget and we're like scraping through all the different tactics, we already have identified pockets of money across search and retail media that we're actually going to reinvest in a more productive fashion. But the challenge for us, like you mentioned, I think in order to really maximize the return of retail media in an environment with lower margins, is we're going to have to be extremely surgical on how we approach it, looking for kind of like lower CPCs and being really hands on keyboard on identifying what are some of maybe the potential tail end keywords that can make more sense, what are going to be the right mix from a product and brand search to leverage our dollars to trade up or to move the consumer in the direction that makes the most sense and drives the most incrementality for the brand. Are there product attribution targeting that are going to be able to go get a little bit of market share without having to spend incredibly high CPCs on top of funnel keywords or audiences, because I mean, our at the end, our level of aggressiveness is going to depend on the opportunities that we uncover. But I can tell you right now, what I'm certainly not going to do is chase market share at all costs, like I have been asked to do in other certain instances.
Well, there's two things there I really want to like highlight for the audience and the viewers. Like that was two things that really popped out at me. So first of all, you're 100% right. What's so interesting is obviously budgets are built in this fixed sort of, year over year. And, even if you're doing zero based budgeting, you're thinking about, you're aware of what you spent in the past and then trying to, re-justify it. And of course, most budgets aren't even zero based budget. They're based on previous years. And yet the whole promise of retail media is that it's performance based and it is tying the
Yeah,
analytics deeper in, and so those two things are at a fundamental conflict. And
absolutely.
so the opportunity for a challenger brand, we're always trying to figure out on the show, like, challenger brand versus traditional brand, what are the strengths and weaknesses, what are they playing against each other, because that is such a big part of the dynamic in consumer packaged goods these days, as barriers to entry have fallen. And so you just highlighted one there that hasn't come up on the show and that we haven't talked about yet, and I love that, the idea of exploitations of fixed budgets and how actually they're not aligned with some of the dynamics and opportunities within retail media. So I love that. That is definitely worth double clicking on. The second thing that you said that was also really interesting was, it was again just about incrementality. And by the time this podcast goes live, we'll also be live with another one, which is an interview with Melissa Burdick, the president of PackView. And so, if anybody hasn't seen that show, and one of the things that Melissa talked a lot about was incrementality. It's all like what the focus is right now in retail media is how do we get incrementality out of it? She really talked about that dynamic. So anybody who's interested in this segment, with Noah, hasn't seen Melissa, should go back, find that segment, contrast the two, because I think together, you can really start to get a feel for some of the deeper levers within retail media. So thank you for that, Noah. That was awesome. All right, so I want to shift just a little bit away from retail media, but sticking with Suave's marketing. Part of what Suave was doing, this again was more under Unilever, so I'm sort of curious if you think this will stick. But a big focus in let's call it the more national media, or at least but still digital, was poking fun at the marketing tactics of other hair care brands, arguably other ones within Unilever's portfolio, which was awesome to see. But does that marketing for you, does that really focus purely at the top of the funnel, or did you guys have thoughts as you were doing the acquisition on whether that was something you wanted to continue? Did you see potential for that to impact your your e-commerce performance in any tangible ways? Like, what was the thinking on Suave's overall marketing and some of the really fun things they did with EVOS and these other we can almost call them gimmicky, but let's just say they were a lot of fun. They were a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, and you have a great memory for sure. The We had some really cool commercials. The brand, like all the way like from the '80s to the mid 2000s. That was a core part of the marketing identity. Is that brand comparison? It's kind of that making fun of other products that are more expensive but deliver kind of the same salon grade quality service, and benefit. And so it's interesting because then the brand more recently has been moving away from this equity and the core marketing messages that made the brand funny and popular back then. And right now, like we are rebuilding the brand positioning from a marketing standpoint, so I can't
Mm.
really extensively comment on the direction that we're taking. But from an e-commerce standpoint, to answer to your question, I think there's a huge opportunity with e-content to kind of look at what we received and really enhance it to truly tell the story of Suave, of talking about the benefits, the value proposition, the formulas, and what makes it uniquely positioned in the market to meet those needs. And so there will be ways to kind of leverage that legacy marketing thinking and bring it to life in a new digital fashion that I think, due to the deprioritization of the brand, hasn't really been an emphasis from Unilever in the past, and gives us a lot of low hanging fruit to leverage that part of e-commerce to strengthen the positioning of the brand.
Love it. Love it. Well, perfect segue to talk about influencers, one of my favorite topics. How are you guys thinking about using influencers in the new Suave marketing
Oh
stack?
man, influencers. It's a love hate story. No.
Oh,
No,
he
no, no,
says
no,
it
no.
true.
No, no. It's funny because I really started diving in and working first with influencers. You know what? With you guys when I was with Procter and Gamble.
Yep.
And so we call it, we come back full circle here. No, well, I mean, talking about leveraging uh, e-content and just content in general to kind of really talk about the positioning of the brand and the value prop. I think influencer is going to be key to spread the word again and unlock that full potential, and kind of like really making sure that when we partner with influencers that we get that authentic review, authentic experience, because that's what the brands, like if you look at the old commercials, were really based off of, is kind of that authentic model that was talking about her hair and then didn't know that it was delivered by Suave. So how can we leverage the power of influencers to test the brand, get their own opinion about the brand, and communicate on their own personal experience? Because that's really what we're going to try to do here, is getting authentic content and get people to talk about what is unique about their experience using the product compared to a standard product. And it's not necessarily going to be unique of like, oh, like we're so different, but how surprising potentially some of the
Mm.
benefits that the brand is going to deliver compared to what they were expecting. And so we're going to be building on that authenticity, because people really need to understand that Suave is not just a value brand; it's more of a quality brand that can deliver affordable pricing, salon grade beauty. And so I think influencers are going to play a key role in delivering that marketing message. And then from an e-commerce standpoint, I think then once we have that, it's leveraging that UGC content and strengthening our product detail pages and driving that conversion up by conveying that experience.
If that's the positioning, I think you're spot on that influencers play a key role, and when you can convey value and quality at the same time. I mean, to me, what I've seen through my career for sure is that is best voiced through the consumer, whether it's UGC or influencer, which obviously, two sides of the same coin. So, I very much love that. I also love that you closed with the point, as a good e-commerce guy would, but you're getting the product detail pages right. The cost of doing that relative to the bang for the buck there, that ROI, which just keeps on giving, for
Yeah,
years,
for years.
It's I think it's one of those things where you spend marketing dollars and you see something happen, whether it's a positive ROI or a negative, even if it's a negative ROI, or you don't fully get a ROAS on it. You see the till turning and you feel good about yourself. And so, that's where all the money goes. But when you improve a product page, right, it's a passive activity, and then you're waiting for the marketing or somebody else to push people there. Again, even if you don't do that with the right product page, right, the conversion rate's going to go up over time. You're going to get more traffic over time, but it's this slow, passive thing, but the return on it is massive. And so,
Yeah.
I think it, even to this day, with all the great analytical tools we've got for, measuring the importance of imagery and videos and everything else, I think it's still an underinvested side of the house.
And you know what people don't really understand, I think, is also depending on the channels that you are going to leverage influencers on. you're going to just build share of voice across the digital platforms because you're going to gain organic relevancy through Google search, through the YouTube
Yes.
algorithm, through the TikTok algorithm that are going to unlock long-term search volumes and just a self fulfilling search model. And I don't think that influencers are considered enough as a search tactic. But it's you can revert, like, it's reverse SEO. If you implement it properly, you will gain more relevancy across the digital channels and more awareness across the digital channels. So I think, to your point, it's there's three sides to the coin, because you're talking about the marketing, you're talking about the UGC, and then you're talking about your search improvements as well. So I think, no, influencers leveraged the right way can really unlock huge amounts of benefits.
100%. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Said it better than I did. All right. So one of the things we have talked about, it's amazing how many P&G alumni are out in the world. I mean, it continues to be true that it is the training ground for the, consumer packaged good, and frankly, all industries at this point. You see people from P&G at Google and Facebook and everywhere. And so I don't think it's unfair at all to say that they continue to be the consumer packaged goods iconic company. And so I always like to ask when people have come, spend time there. What lessons did you take away? What were the big insights and learnings for you?
Oh man, so many. No, it's a fantastic training ground. You meet great people. You're exposed to great business problems to solve. And so it's I cannot be more grateful for my years at Procter and Gamble. But okay, if I had to keep a few and narrow it down, I would say that there are really four that I take away. And at first, it would be really like, start by developing strong business fundamentals, then build ownership, then leadership. The networking is key for career and personal development. And then the last one, that's the hardest for me, was know when to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go a little more deeper in those four, I'd say, so start by developing strong business fundamentals. Look, I've been through a different kinds of organizations lately. After public with P&G, privately owned by private equity with eCloth, and then just private pre-IPO at Shark Ninja. And so I've seen numerous leaders or investors lead entire organizations to failure just because they were setting aspirational visions that just made no business sense because it sounded cool and they had bad business acumen. So, I mean, for me, building strong business fundamentals starts with robust analytics, building hard skills like Excel, and then a robust P&L understanding. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the function, if it's sales, marketing, or product supply, business starts with numbers and ends with numbers.
Hmm.
So you really need to understand those as like your fundamental to start building the rest. Then second, I mentioned, I think, just to like continue to strengthen those business fundamentals once you have your hard skills. It's just being curious and kind of understanding all of the functions that impact your role around you. And so, if you're leading e-commerce sales, you got to understand retail media and you got to understand e-content. So you really need to work with your marketing folks to make sure that you can build a strategy that supports your e-commerce sales. So e-commerce is not just sales. And same thing, like, you need to understand product supply. You need to make sure that the products are being designed with the right packaging for the channel, and that orders are fulfilled properly because it's a different channel. Like, to build strong fundamentals, you need to understand that cross-functional matrix and the different teams that are and functions that are around you to make that impact. And then finally, once you get a good understanding of your organization and you have a robust analytical and P&L understanding, then it's how to communicate with impact. Like, you need to be able to communicate your business approach properly, and that's that honing on those business writing and presentation skills that P&G really enabled me to grow in and master to round up my full business fundamentals. And so once, I think, like, it's kind of a sequence, because once you have that strong business fundamental, for me, it's kind of focusing on ownership and then leadership. And so when I talk about ownership, it's really like taking full responsibility of delivering great outcomes. And so it's proactively meeting all the deadlines, but then also going the extra mile, using those business fundamentals that you acquired to think out of the box and deliver added value to the initial request that was given. And so if you consistently do that, first of all, you'll build confidence in yourself in managing any business situation, but you also build a reputation of someone who's capable of getting things done. And then, so that's where the leadership comes in, because your senior leaders will identify you as a high potential of someone who is disciplined, thinks out of the box to deliver great outcomes, and is consistent. And so they'll put you in positions where you'll start leading greater projects, and you'll be in positions where you'll develop those leadership skills, leading teams, etc. So I think that's the sequence that I got from P&G, is like focus on ownership and the first couple of years of your career, to build that reputation and to build that confidence that will unlock leadership. And then, so the third lesson that I mentioned is kind of like networking really is key to unlock career and personal development. And I'd say like it's important to connect with people within your organization and outside of your organization first to kind of build your professional network. But through that, you'll get exposed to, like industry knowledge and best practices that in another process would have taken you much longer to acquire. And you'll be subject to ideas that you would have not necessarily thought of, and it will help you just kind of in your thinking and in your development. And lastly, it'll open doors. It'll open doors. It'll open opportunities, and through through that, you might take career changes, or you also just might make great friends that are thinking like you, and that you would have not met if you weren't networking. So I think it's key just to like unlock to leverage that for career, but also like really personal. I think people underestimate the personal growth that you can get out of networking. And then the last point, as I said, is know when to leave. And that man, that for me was really the hardest point. And it's not necessarily relevant to everyone, because some, like a lot of people will never leave at P&G or in large organizations. But that's my personal take on the lesson. So I mean, to get into more depth in that one, P&G had given me so many great opportunities to grow personally and professionally. I started as an intern in Europe. I was able to make my way into the US. I had a strong network of fantastic mentors, to name a few, like Ryan, Katie, or Bruno, if they ever end up listening to this podcast, who coached me to become a director in 4.5 years. And I was really grateful for that. I was able to grow and get the skills. It was hard because I had built all of my plans to stay at P&G my entire career. And despite all the support in my career progress, the more I grew and the harder it became for me to kind of really project myself long term in the organization.
Hmm.
And that was okay. I mean, for me, it was hard, but now I think it's okay. And so, yeah, at that point, I was too afraid to leave. I had never worked for another organization. I had been there for over 5 years, 6 years. I wasn't sure how my skills were going to translate into a different organization, and if I could keep the same salary or be as successful. And I also felt like I was kind of betraying people.
Hmm.
But on the flip side, I looking back at the last 2 years since I left, like it was a hard transition. There was very uncomfortable moments, challenging moments, and it took me a long time to kind of reestablish my career and feel comfortable again. But I learned a lot about myself, and I'm in a great spot. I'm extremely happy where I am, and I'm looking forward to where this opportunity is going to take my career.
Well, I love all of that. We're going to come back to the to the last one in the next question, but I want to. I do. That was a tour de force. I mean, no, I think you and I should go write a business book together at some point, because you hit on a couple of themes that are so near and dear to my heart. I've worked with P&G a lot in my career. I've never worked at P&G, and so I'm kind of fascinated by the fact that some of the same themes that you built your career around, or that you learned from P&G and are in the process of building your career around, are some of the things I think are most critical. And so, two, I want to like really highlight. So, first of all, the be curious idea. And it literally, that it came out as your first lesson. Like and I'm spending more and more time now mentoring, junior people and like training our, junior teams, not how to do their jobs, because I don't know how to do their jobs, but actually what's going to lead to career success for them. And so I have this one presentation, and if it may actually be titled this, I don't remember. I think not, because I think it's supposed to be a bit of a surprise, is curiosity. as the number one factor that leads to career success. So when I'm evaluating, like, is this person, a keeper? Is this somebody we really need to help run the organization someday? In the first 3 months on the job, you can always tell, and it's always about curiosity. Because if they're curious and they want to dig in and they go down the rabbit holes of why am I doing this? How could I do it better? And again, not from the point of they want to rip it up and prove that they can do it better, but just they want to understand,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That really unlocks the potential.
Yeah, it's the everything. And then the other thing you said, and actually this is the first time I've truly been able to make this intellectual leap, was through the way you framed it, and I love it, and I'm going to steal it.
You may guess.
People want to be leaders, and that's a very natural thing, and I respect that, and that's ambitious. But I think, a lot of us lack the understanding of, well, how do you become a leader? And the way you become a leader is ownership. And ownership, and that's the word you use. I think the other word people use that can be a little bit synonymous here and might glue this together if somebody didn't get that, is accountable.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, accountability and ownership to me are actually the fundamental core tenets of what makes someone a founder. A founder is not somebody who has a lot of shares. A founder is somebody who is ultimately accountable. There is no the buck goes over here, or was out of my control. Nothing's out of your control if you're a founder, if you're accountable, and if you own something.
Absolutely.
And if you embody ownership and accountability, you become a leader. You defined it as like the leaders at P&G recognize it and they pull you along. And that's probably exactly true. Whether they're doing that because that's what the manual says or they're doing it instinctively, I don't know. But for sure, for me in my career, being more entrepreneurial, it's been that instinctual. This person they're curious, gets them to the first level. They're accountable, makes them a leader. And I just love the way you framed that up. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you for
just to
that.
reinforce that, I think the one thing that, yeah, like people identify and pull you along, but it's also like that process will help you build the confidence to become a leader
Yes.
because you will trust your capabilities of, okay, I can deliver, I can understand what I'm going to be asking my team to deliver and hold them accountable. And that confidence process is also the next step to unlock leaders because leaders without confidence are just bad leaders. Sorry.
Fact. Fact. All right. All right. That was awesome. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit more about your last point, which is something I'm not sure, that I'm actually particularly great at is the, knowing when to leave point. And so, you tie that one to P&G, but again, as we said, and now here's our chance. We're circling back. You ran through a couple of different roles pretty quickly after leaving P&G before ending up at Suave. I know you were headhunted to go there, but you still had to make that leap. And so just in terms of career development and not trying to throw organizations or people under the bus, I'd love to understand a little bit more
Yeah.
how you think through this, calling it early in a career situation. Because I'm stubborn, and I've been doing this thing for 20 years, right? Like that's almost in today's world by definition doing something wrong. And so, how do you think through those things?
It's a great question. I was thinking about how do I approach this question? Do I tell you the real? Do I sugarcoat it like the U.S. corporation will want so I can protect myself? But no, here, honestly, like there's three situations where I've identified myself, and this was a process of like really learning, being in uncomfortable positions with high anxiety or uncertainty of like going through that for the first couple of times and identifying when was the right time to go. And there's really three situations in my opinion where it's important to call it early in order to go develop yourself somewhere else. First is if you can't grow. If you end up stuck in a situation where you realize that because there are higher powers that are blocking you to put in to getting into situations where you're going to grow or you can get the right skill set, like I mean, unless you're complacent and to reach their own, like there's nothing wrong in different career approaches. But for me, if I can't grow, I'm going to look for something else where I can actually grow. Second is if you're stuck in a toxic environment and there's nothing you can do to change it, like it's
Mhm.
out of your power, you can't influence staffing, you can influence company culture, you can influence business processes. I think you should try first, but and we'll get there in a second. But if it's out of your power, then you shouldn't stay because it's going to ruin you. And then the last one is if you're underpaid. If you realize that you've built a certain skill set and that the market is willing to pay a certain level, and that you entertain conversations with your companies and they're for different reasons are not willing to pay, and that sometimes they just even financially can't. Like at eCommerce, like we just didn't have money to give people raises, and that's an actual fact. Like people get mad to corporations, but you have to remember it's a business, and a business has money, and sometimes you can spend it, sometimes you can't. Especially when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be, or a startup, you have to be extremely mindful of how you allocate your dollars. But those are the three situations where I would call it early. And so if I had to go back into my personal experience, how I got there really is, so I left P&G to join the startup, and so I got lured by the opportunity of the exit, and I came from a large corporation at Procter and Gamble where I was always working with brands that had high awareness. Um, I didn't really understand the challenge of how expensive it was to build the equity of a new brand from scratch. I didn't understand EBITDA at the time properly, and how hard it was to really grow like true profit EBITDA from like 1 million to 6 million. For me, it sounded like nothing from Procter and Gamble, but it's a mountain when you're a small organization. And then lastly, I never questioned the importance of being cash flow positive. It was nothing. It was nothing, never a situation that I had to worry about. And so I jumped in like naively in this opportunity that was full of red flags at eCloth. And 6 months in, we were running out of the COVID frenzy that was driving the profit and the financial health of the company, and we started losing $150,000 per month. And the board fired 40% of the staff, including the CEO and the CMO. And that's when I realized, okay, this is not a place where I'm going to be able to grow long term because financially they don't have the opportunity to support people that way. And next thing you know, 2 months later, even though I had just closed the deal with Walmart to launch the brand at Walmart, which is huge, I got fired.
Oh, wow.
and I saw. Luckily for me, I saw the writing on the wall that summer when they started laying off more people, and I knew I was a high salary. I was more of a burden than an asset long term. And when they could replace me, they would do it. And so I was deep in interviews with other companies, and I landed a job a couple weeks right after. So it was perfect transition for me. But yeah, that's what happened, and that's how I got to Shark Ninja because when I started seeing that they were reducing staff and that we didn't really have an opportunity to turn around the business financially, there's no outcome. It was a moment to call it early. Little did I know that this was how it was going to end because I was about to get the offer and tell them that I was going to leave, but they cut me short, and then I joined Shark Ninja. And look, it's interesting. Like that's my personal experience. I think everyone needs to make their own opinion about the company, but I didn't take the Glassdoor review seriously because I thought I could power through anything since I'd worked in you know extremely high paced environments with high expectations at Procter and Gamble. And I was like, okay, maybe the company evolved it so fast in the last 15 years from a startup to a bigger corporation that the culture has changed, the expectations have changed, anything. But a couple of months in, I just realized that the company's environment and culture was not a right fit for me.
Hmm.
And it was an environment that I could not change. I could not impact the business processes. I could not impact the culture. And so yet, like I was not going to be able to deliver what I thought I could fully deliver for this company. And so it was a very selfish decision, but it was for me, it was not an environment that I could thrive in. And I knew that I could bring something else to another company. And I started interviewing, and I actually this time I really took the time to talk to a lot of companies. I went through different reviews. I got to final stages of a couple of companies. Didn't get the job. Was pretty disappointed there. I actually made progress in other great opportunities and doing more due diligence despite the high salary that it could represent. I just stopped the process because I knew it was not going to be for me. And so
Mm.
I even called it early in the recruiting process, despite like the great opportunity that it represented from a business challenge standpoint. And that's where through that process I got headhunted by Suave, and talking to it took me a week between the time they got the offer and I accepted it because I took the time to talk to a lot of different people on the board in the organization to make sure that I could fully impact the company the way I wanted, it was the right fit for me. And it was great. They took the time. They were amazing partners through the recruiting process. And I felt it was the right choice for me.
That's awesome. I mean, I really appreciate the very clear-eyed, sober, transparent, analysis. I think everyone can sort of benefit from understanding those stories. We treat them, you know, like the deepest, darkest parts of our personal life, even though it is a part that is playing out in somewhat of a public forum. And I think we all make tons and tons of career mistakes. One, because we don't have the benefit of stories like the ones you were able to tell, and two, we're not as honest with ourselves frequently as you are with yourself, and even sharing that with the wider world. So I very much appreciate that. Was awesome.
If you
Um,
just to build on that, I mean, if you build the right skill set, the right network, we talked about it before, and you have the right attitude, like you'll find a job. It's just that I think a bit regrettable in our industry in the CPG space that there's such stigma in like bouncing around. Like in tech, people jump around all the time,
yeah,
and companies use that at their advantage. They let people go, build skills, build awareness, build experience, and then they come back and they even grow the original company in a better fashion. So I think it's good to do it a little bit, but you shouldn't make it a habit because then it's harder to justify, and even it's hard for yourself. So it's just like do the right experiences for yourself and find what's right for you. Just don't make it a habit.
well, it's the interesting thing you said that I picked up on there was, you said it was a selfish decision. And I think one of the things, and this is something I've been in, more my personal life, as I've tried to become more self-aware, of myself, my needs, my wants, what I'm doing to other people. The idea of selfish is such a negative word, probably in all societies.
Yeah,
Certainly, even in the materialistic American society, right? Selfish is considered this sort of very negative word. But if you redefine selfish as a little bit about self care, one of the things I've sort of come to appreciate, you got to get yourself right before you can do right
absolutely,
for anybody else,
absolutely.
including the company you're at. So when you said it's a selfish decision, I actually was like, no, it's not. It's selfish to stay at a company where the fit's not right, and you're not able to contribute. So you're holding a role where you're underperforming because the fit's not right, and therefore the company's getting underperformance, and they can't get somebody else into the role though because you're there. And is it bad enough to let you go? So if people actually were maybe a little bit more selfish and trying to make sure the fit was right between them and the company, I think we'd all be better off. So I hear you. Like there's, and nobody's going to hire somebody that they don't perceive has the potential to be loyal and, for that to be a two-way street. But if there's transparency and there's good intent, a little bit selfish isn't actually selfish at all. So, well, we could riff on this for a while. We're getting close to wrapping up, and I just want to touch on one other thing that I noticed on your on your LinkedIn, which is that when you were in college, you were doing all these ambassadorships for brands. And I was like, well, that's a different way to get a business education. And I didn't know if it was like something peculiar to French higher education, which I'm not that familiar with. And so, is there a lesson there, or is there, anything that now that you've been in the States for a while, like if you were giving advice to like a college student and how to kind of get themselves primed for business, like what would that be? And what did you learn from those roles?
Man, I really wasn't expecting you to go that far back. It brings so many great memories back, though. If I just think through the question, it was a lot of fun. First of all, like those years were a lot of fun. Those experiences were a lot of fun. Life on campus in France, um, in business schools, I guess, is similar in ways that there are a lot of clubs and association. I guess, like in the U.S. I think the nuance there, though, is how to say it. Like there is a central organization, student organization. Uh, that is a bit like higher than all the other clubs,
Mm,
called the in French le BDE, Bureau des élèves, which translates into a Bureau of Students. Whom like the main goal of this organization is to kind of dictate the rhythm of student life on campus through
mm,
the parties, which is a huge part of it. Like obviously like club parties or happy hours, even in the city, or like barbecue on campus, like things like that. as well as doing other corporate events in partnerships with brands. And that organization has actually about a $500,000 budget for an entire year, and you have to run a campaign and get elected to it. And so I had the opportunity to participate in it and get elected with my team, my peers. We formed a team, and I was the president of that organization for a year from like mid 2013 to mid 2014. And so back to those events, and especially on the latter one, on the corporate ones, as the president, I was approached by two big companies, Mars and Ubisoft, to organize campus events in partnership with these organizations. And so for Mars, it was, which is a totally different way to do it in the U.S. But for Mars, they leveraged our association to organize a kind of a recruiting event. So it was kind of a way to promote their corporate brand
Mm.
among future young professionals to build their equity and try to seek for talent. And so that was an incredible experience for me because for, as I was the president, they thought I would be the right candidate to help them organize that, and they did that across many business schools in France, and they all invited us to their headquarters of Mars, France, for a day of preparation of ahead of this recruiting event. And so it helped me, first of all, get knowledge. That's where I discovered CPG, man. I had no idea of this industry. I
Mm.
didn't really know how it worked. And that was my first foot in the CPG industry as helping Mars in their recruiting efforts of our campus. And they helped me, it unlocked an opportunity because at the end of the summer, they offered me the opportunity to interview for an internship. So that was an incredible experience. And then Ubisoft was more fun. It was more marketing because we had such a big impact on student life. They partnered with us so we could organize a big Just Dance competition to promote the new video game back then on campus. And they offered I was, I think, a Nintendo Wii to win or something like that. But it was really fun to kind of then be involved in that marketing effort of like they same process. They brought all of the students that they had identified across the different campuses in France back to their headquarters in Paris. I saw all the video game world universe. It was really fun. And then we talked about how we're gonna like what are the different animations, what are the different things that you can do on campus to promote the video game. So you kind of understood how different kind of marketing tactics come to play. And then bring it to life. And we executed with them like a full event during the day, and we had like live interaction. People came to play a video game. There was a contest and everything. It was a lot of fun. So I would highly recommend as early as you can seize any business opportunities that you have coming up your way. Back to the curiosity, like I never want. For me, it was so unsexy to sell soap. Like I was like, I'm not going to spend my entire life selling consumer products in a grocery store. It makes no sense. That was my mindset when I got approached by Mars for that opportunity, and here I am in 7 years in CPG. Like, just be curious because you don't know, and you don't know where it's going to go. So, and it's fun, and you get to do different experiences. You get to meet new people, and you get to understand the real world when you're a student that way. It's very pragmatic experiences, but I highly recommend anyone to get involved to just for that experience because you never know where it's going to take you. Here we are.
Well, maybe the other lesson is for folks already in CPG, check out the folks in student government because, like you, actually, I was in student government, and it was a hugely formative, experience for me. I sort of fell into it just in wanting to get involved in something on campus, and then that ended up being the thing. And I think there's great appreciation in the business world for athletes, right? The
Yeah,
dedication that they bring to their craft, and we're always trying to recruit different athletes. But there's something to the experiences that you have in student government. It's a far less glamorous, but equally self-starter kind of person that gets involved in student government kind of activities, and you do get exposed to the real world. Even again, I wasn't in it was straight up student government. So if anything, I was exposed to like state politics because I was at a public university, but I still came to understand how the world worked and really
yeah,
felt like I had a big advantage, starting down my business career, having done that. So
absolutely. I
I
agree.
love it. Well, so we'll wrap up there. Usually this was kind of our one for fun, but I loved earlier you mentioned Ryan, Katie, and Bruno. So we're going to get the deets on Ryan, Katie, and Bruno. Make sure we shout them out. in the marketing for this podcast, so that they will find it and they will
Yeah.
watch it, because they sound like they were key catalysts along the way. So we very much appreciate that. Noah, we very much appreciate having you on the show. This was an incredible conversation. I got so much out of it. I know the audience did as well. So thank you for being here.
Bill, thanks so much for having me. I know it's been a couple months of trying to schedule this and get the conversation, but it was so much fun, and I really appreciate the conversation. And hopefully, I'll see you at Unboxed, and if not, I'll see you at another industry event soon. But anyone who's at Unboxed, please come over, and looking forward to catching up with industry peers and chatting.
Love it. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time for Generation Influence.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Generation Influence drop every Wednesday, so be sure to check us out and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. You can find information on next week's guest in the description below. Hope to see you then and there.